Allah be pleased with him, as their commander, and there were 300 men. We set out, and we had covered some distance on the way when our journey food and provisions ran short. So Abu Ubaidah ordered that all the food present with the troops be collected, and it was collected. Our journey food was dates, and Abu Ubaidah kept on giving us our daily share from it little by little until it decreased to such an extent that we did not receive or accept a date each. Jabir asked, "How did you survive on one date?" He said, "We came to know its value when even that finished." Jabir added, "Then we reached the sea coast where we found a fish like a small mountain." What does this sound like? A whale or a shark, perhaps. The people, the troops, ate from it for 18 nights. So 300 people ate from a fish that was large enough for 18 nights. This is an authentic hadith. So what does this tell you? If 300 people ate from a fish for 18 days or 18 nights, then is it halal? It's halal. Okay? And these are your arguments. And how impressive for someone who is a revert to say, well, you know, I remember this story of this troops that were traveling. There were 300 men, and then look what happened. Abu Ubaidah ordered that 2 of its ribs be fixed on the ground in the form of an arch. It must have looked like McDonald's arch. And that a she-camel be ridden and passed under them. So it passed under them without touching them. So Allahu A'lam, I surmise from that the only fish that I know of that would have ribs that big that a she-camel could go under would be a whale. Right? Allahu A'lam, maybe there's some other fish we don't know about. But at least we have this principle here, and we understand where the scholars got the arguments. Keeping my eye on the time there. The slaughtering of an animal to seek the pleasure of anyone other than Allah and calling the name of that anyone while slaughtering it is unanimously forbidden. The slaughtering of an animal to seek the pleasure of anyone other than Allah, despite the fact that the animal slaughtered by calling the name of Allah, is also forbidden. So the example of this is, let's say that some dignitary is coming to town, and we say, and this is cultural by the way, we're going to slaughter an animal for the sake of Imam so-and-so. That makes it haram according to all 4 schools of thought. Why?
Because you only slaughter for the sake of Allah.
You only slaughter for the sake of Allah. In both cases, the fuqaha, the scholars, the fiqh, consider these animals dead. So in the Islamic pretext or context paradigm, an animal slaughtered for any other reason other than the case of for the sake of Allah is considered a dead animal. And we can't eat dead animals, right? And this also makes a very strong argument for zabiha. Allahu A'lam, Allah knows best. I don't want to get into that, but because that's really not, the context of this is more about the water animals and what Allah has made pure. The actual word zabiha does not exist in this particular verse. An example of this would be slaughtering an animal to celebrate the visit of a dignitary. Historically, some tribes would cut off an animal's ear lobe or brand it to seek the pleasure of an entity. So these were pagans other than Allah. In this case, the animal was neither used in its normal function or slaughtered for food. Now, if, I just want you to know the exception in terms of fiqh, if you inherited that animal, you had nothing to do with that, it's not the case, or you purchased that animal. But just to go and get that animal and do it, it's considered haram. Because the intention when that was done was for another deity. Injunctions and situations of compulsion. A person who is extremely compelled by hunger or their life is in danger, in other words, steal or starve. Or starve or steal, I should have said. For example, in the Islamic fiqh, if you have a child, and let's say you're upset with your child, you're not speaking to your child, but let's say your child is destitute and doesn't have food. If they come in and raid your refrigerator, that is not considered stealing in Islam. In the American paradigm, we would say, oh, you stole my food. Not in the Islamic paradigm, because that's a right. The food belongs to Allah, and that's a right. Purpose to save life, not enjoy eating. So, in other words, I gave the example that if my plane crashes, and I happen to be the survivor, and I see this little pig that's just over there and I can eat, I'm not hungry though. Can I use that concession? No. It's starve or die. I'm going to die if I don't eat this pig. So now I can eat it. Do you understand? So we don't take a license for these exceptions to go out on a limb and to create an emergency situation that's not an emergency. So it wouldn't be an emergency when I played a football game, I was really, really hungry, we went out for pizza and the only thing they had was pepperoni, so I ate. That doesn't work. That doesn't fly, okay? So it's an eat or die situation. In situations where no treatment or medicine works, an exception exists for the unlawful things to be used as a life-saving prevention. Now, one time, they were using it one time for heart transplants, the heart of pigs. And there were some Muslims that had big arguments about, I can't have this in my body. Well, what is the priority in Islam is life. So if that would save your life, that would be one of the exceptions. The same way is that we don't look for an excuse to take NyQuil because of all the alcohol in it. But if the doctor prescribed a medicine, then it would be permissible. All books of hadith report the episode related to the Urayna tribe, where villagers suffered from several diseases, came to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and he permitted them to use camel milk and urine, which cured them. So here was another situation that actually created a cure. But if one is forced by necessity without willful disobedience, so, and I think this is what you really want to see, without willful disobedience, nor transgressing the limits, then there is no sin on him. And we all know what that is. So I'm actually going to stop here because I want us to get set up for the Jeopardy game. What we'd like to do is have a balance of people on this side and this side. We have more on this side. This will be team 1 and this will be team 2. And so we will have our monthly Jeopardy game, inshallah. I love you all for the sake of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Should I